Electrocast.
This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use, but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year and plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Western demands.
Now, this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you.
I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or whatever movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up, and welcome to Or Whatever Movies. I'm your co-host, Iris, and I'm here with my older brother,
Wesley.
And today we're discussing HBO original documentary.
No.
Defending Your... No?
You watched the documentary?
Defending My Life. So it was just extra credit. I did Defending Your Life, and then I did Defending My Life.
Good. Hopefully you can add some insight to this discussion, as I did not watch Defending My Life, given that I've now seen only one Wow. Even though
wow.
I've seen one Albert Brooks starrer, director, writer film.
Wow.
This is a blind spot.
Me too. That's why I'm calling this episode not Defending Your Life, but rather Growing Up Not Jewish in LA. Because apparently that's what we did.
This episode is brought to you by a very special person. His name is Sean Fenton, and he requested Defending Your Life apparently so many times to me that I have no recollection of whatsoever, and then went to the Sneak and was like, hey, you should ask them to cover it. And the Sneak was like, why don't you just do it? And I was like, why don't we just do it? And you were like, what? And then almost watched the wrong movie.
Well, I watched the requested movie and was so bowled over by my lack of knowledge of this very original filmmaker that when I saw Defending My Life, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to double feature that right now. So thank you, Sean, for opening up a whole new niche of cinema for me and apparently for us.
You know who Oh my God, I have to stop. Do you know who Albert Brooks is for me?
Who?
He's Marlin in Finding Nemo.
You love Finding Nemo. Do you know how he came to the Nemo role?
No.
So Pixar wanted Albert Brooks for the dad in Nemo, and they flew him out to Emeryville, and then they showed him a clip of Marlin speaking out a scene of Defending Your Life.
Huh.
And he was like, oh, that's cool, I'm in.
Interesting. So thematically, he says that the character, Sam, never felt like any theology was more prominent or more important than another. I'm paraphrasing. But first thing I noticed is he's cruising along with his buddy, who's the dad from 90210. And I was like, oh, the dad from 90210. And then there's Barbra Streisand and the BMW thing, which I think is a stereotype. And I was trying to think, what's the other movie where someone dies in a car accident and then is in this weird, like, corporate-like purgatory? A word also he never said. I don't know if that has Christian connotations, purgatory, or is that just a generic word?
A place in between.
The title, given the concept of a dude who dies in a car accident and goes to like an afterlife way station and meets assorted characters, you know what I came up with?
Go.
Beetlejuice. It's got some Disney Pixar soul in there. And maybe,
I totally have in my notes, this is a Pixar live action.
And even before Meryl Streep said it, I said Judgment City is like the Disneyland of death. And then a half an hour later, she said it.
Yeah, when they're in line for the Past Lives exhibit.
Yeah.
It's an a-religious movie. It's non-denominational. It doesn't have a specific religious bent, but it's definitely culturally Jewish humor. It doesn't mean that there's not universal humor in there too, but I think it's a universally funny Jewish-flavored comedy.
Yes, but it's ultra dry humor, and it's subversive, I dare say. Not all the jokes land, I don't think. It's more conversational, observational humor. And of course, Sam is quick-witted, but it's a little bit sterile and utilitarian and not on the head, punch you in the face funny. It was like the afterlife version of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Listen to us, two non-Jews kibitzing about how Jewish humor works.
It was technically excellent, and it was carefully crafted, well written. It's a different kind of humor that I think is specific, and I don't think is alienating, but it requires a gear shift to be along for the ride of his life. Get it? The ride of your life. Get it?
So you're begging the question, did you laugh?
I did very rarely. The part where I laughed the most was the past lives pavilion. When they go into the little personal theater and they see their past lives, only a few of them. And the dude, he sees Elizabeth, the little girl, and he's like, what the hell is this? Meryl Streep's all thrilled by being Prince Valiant, even though I don't think that's a real character. And that felt very direct, in-your-face humor, and that part made me smile. Again, the rest of it was subversive. For some reason, I laughed when he was in the worry chair, like the chair that whirs when it spins, when he was in the spinning chair. And it goes...
When he's on trial?
And turns around all slowly every time they play a clip.
Right.
And the clip is over, and he goes and starts the long spin back toward the judges. That made me laugh. But like I said, it felt functional and utilitarian and quippy, but not necessarily like it didn't bust my gut. That said, when he's flirting hardcore with Meryl Streep and he's got to come back and a clever joke for everything she says, and she's in hysterics, right? I look over and Kelly Ray, who was yawning and fidgety during this movie part of the time, was thoroughly charmed.
Beaming.
Just like he's so, like, she didn't say it, but she felt that he was so adorable and charming.
I was thoroughly amused. I was engrossed. I was amused. Maybe the sterility comes from just the clinical halls of Judgment City.
Yeah, I agree. They were walking through Judgment City at one point, and Kelly Ray said, that's the floor building in Irvine. That's where her dad used to work. And I was like, and she's like, yeah, there's the other building that's totally floor in Irvine. And I was like, that makes perfect sense, because Irvine is the most boring, sterile environment possible. It's all corporate business parks and stuff, and it's all shiny, and you can't make a U-turn anywhere. It makes perfect sense to me.
But I do think that this is an important note about the humor. This is meant to be bust your gut humor. In the Defending My Life documentary, comic luminaries are all lining up to tell Rob Reiner why Albert Brooks was in some way the genesis of their comedic trajectory. You know, the reason that they came to comedy, because when he would do his bits, which were, you know, original but kind of out there and a little abstract, as Jon Stewart put it, but they were busting guts. They were on the floor, like audiences were rolling, and I think that's what this was meant to be. There's not a mean bone in Albert Brooks's comedy body. Like, the comedy it's like an extension of himself, or at least his character of Sam in Defending Your Life. It's sincere. Like, when he's talking with Meryl Streep over dinner and she's like, you have a hot tub in your room? He's like, no. And then she's trying to backpedal and be like, oh, I don't have one. I just have a tub with holes, with jets or something like that. And he's like, you don't have to do that. I'm very happy for you. Happy you have a hot tub. And then she's like, oh, you're right. I use it every night. And then he's like, lots of bubbles. And he kind of uses this little hand motion and makes this little face that I'm doing right now that nobody can see, where he kind of like shakes his head like, ooh, I'm so excited for your little bubbles. And I'm like looking for the malice. I'm looking for the sarcasm. And I don't think there was any of it. It was funny, but it was sincere. And it really struck me that the whole movie is about fear, which is like a very poignant theme. And they do it so simply with such truth. And the comedy is very clean. And it just felt fresh for a 1991 film.
It is earnest and open. And so maybe the distinction between Albert Brooks and Mel Brooks is that Mel Brooks definitely went on the raunchier crazier, zanier side. But some of it did smack of those things, like the sushi scene where I couldn't, and Kelly Ray was like, is it racist? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe it was just pure in intention, and they're friendly and welcoming and good night, and he's like, I'm not leaving. I'm just going to go take a piss. Take a piss, Is it, I couldn't tell. It was such left of center comedy from what the road that I'm used to. And looking for the malice too. Remember the guy, the porno guy? Sam is trying to figure out how long is too long to be in Judgment City. And he's talking to the porno guy at the sushi bar, and he tells him how long, guys, what do you do for a living there, Sam? It's, how about you? And how long are you in for? And it's, 9 days or whatever. And he's like, how long are you in for? And he goes, 15 days. And he goes, Sam says, is that a lot? And he's like, I don't know. Like, you made the rules. This is your world, and nobody knows what's happening. There's no, like, and so I was waiting for him to be condemned for being the shady porno all nude phrase coining dude, and it just
totally
wasn't
all nude.
It was just he was just another dude enjoying some sushi and the friendliness of the sushi chefs.
I never quite figured out the rules, which is interesting because they didn't seem as important as maybe they do in a horror movie, for example. But I guess just this very small sampling gives us an indication. I think all trials for 4 days, but the number of life days that are examined are different. And the porno dude, or the totally all nude dude, had 15 days. Homeboy had 9 days. And then Meryl Streep, who was apparently an apotheosis of a little brain, only had 4 days.
Note to self, look up apotheosis.
It's so funny you say that because that's the second time you've noted that. And you still haven't looked it up, little brain.
Oh, man. The other weird phrase that caught my attention was the announcement for the Judgment Stables, open until sunset. Like, I don't know. That felt like a life and death kind of thing.
Because of the sunset metaphor?
Yeah, I feel like it was chock full, and I only got some of it.
And like the Face Your Fears game show?
It was interesting, the concept of facing your fears, overcoming your fear through generations, life cycles, to eventually become smarter and use X amount of your brain. That was an interesting concept. It speaks to intelligence and presence that certain people possess, and other people whose lives are governed by fear, and maybe they're more in their infancy in terms of their number of life cycles or whatever. The more mature, they realize how much farther you can get being fearless. It was a nice message.
I mean, these aren't untread story paths, right? Like, I've seen a dozen Afterlife movies, although I can't name any right now. But this felt like a fresh and really honest take on this concept.
It's generally about morality and sometimes atoning or finishing a thing that makes you your best person. Those Afterlife movies, at least the ones of this type that are lighter, more romantic, more comedic, and not darker ones. But it didn't have anything to do with morality. Porno guy wasn't looked down upon. He wasn't wandering around like, hey, I'm in a way station, a purgatory type setting, but I really want to move on, so I got to make a good impression. He's like, nah, dude, the porno thing, the all nude thing, that was me. That's me, buddy. And he didn't care. It wasn't about morality. Sam's character didn't seem overly fearful in his life. He still had to overcome a real fear because he was kind of on the fence. He was supposed to be the everyman, every one of us, who of course is subjected to fears and it influences our decisions. But ultimately we have to sit back and assess how much that would be holding us back if we let fear kind of dominate our lives. It's innate and instinctual. It's a self-preservation tactic that I think is at the heart of religious rumination, this idea that you have to overcome the baser instincts of yourself, what it is to be human, and to use your logic and your intellect to triumph over the baser fears and instincts that drive us. How about that? That was at least a 20% brainer assessment.
You're giving yourself a lot of credit there, but maybe I think what you're getting at is that our motivations are complicated. And the defense and the prosecutor had one point that they're trying to make, that he acts out of fear or he acts out of some other motivation. And what Sam constantly caught in the middle kept coming back to was this idea that our motivations are complicated. And he takes these incredibly relatable scenes, like the scene where he's like rehearsing the speech with his wife and how he's going to show his boss what he's worth. And then the next moment, the boss is like, I'm prepared to offer you $15,000 less than you are going to bargain for.
I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. And his timing is impeccable. I mean, just perfect. But then his kind of justification for why he did what he did felt true to me. Like,
life is hard, but finding a really great podcast makes the days go by so much easier. Hi, my name is Blue Telusma. I'm a writer, an emotional intelligence coach, and the host of Humanize with Blue Telusma, a podcast where we believe that when you humanize everyone in the room, a great conversation is almost guaranteed. Join us every week here on Electricast as me and my guest co-hosts unpack big topics and interview even bigger personalities with a sense of humor and a dash of mischief. If you're looking for a new best friend in your head, we've got you covered. Electricast.
Yes, you could argue that he was afraid of who knows what. It didn't matter what he was afraid of, but just that he was acting out of fear. Or maybe it was complicated, and he did genuinely feel like $49,000 was enough money and that he and his wife could live comfortably off of that. And it was so true.
It was true, and it wasn't heavy-handed. It was more nuanced, practical, and relatable, at least as a concept. His justifications seemed truer than just in it for funny comedic timing. It's true that he would have been happy, and it was okay enough. And that's why he wasn't malicious or stymied by fear. He was just more in a gray area. And I think that his court, so to speak, and the people sitting in judgment on him were not convinced that, because on the surface it looks like fear, when really he just didn't want to, I don't know, maybe not complicate his life or bite the hand. I'm not sure.
Yeah, he didn't seem like particularly enlightened, but he also didn't seem burdened by that fact. He seemed kind of okay with who he was, which I think must count for something in this version of life and afterlife and the way things work. But he certainly seems to make up for whatever he lacked in his life on Earth, in his kind of daring display of love with Julia. So when I was watching this, all I could think was like, this must be like the pinnacle of hotness of Meryl Streep for you. Like all glowing and white, and like you love it when people are nice. Like you love nice, pretty chicks.
Oh, okay. Well, let's say that Meryl Streep, who had been turned away by people like Dino De Laurentiis and stuff, like, why do you bring me this ugly girl or whatever, never been known for her outright beauty, is certainly, a lovely looking lady. And in this movie looked great in her tufa or whatever they called it. But this was the year before, I think, Death Becomes Her, which was arguably her most glammed up youthful beauty role, the idea being to preserve beauty at all costs. So yeah, she's appealing or whatever, I guess. It's not what this is about. You're the one who's making it all pervy.
Come on.
Albert Brooks isn't even about the perv life. He is in it for the real connection, and he knows that their separation, because there's no doubt she's moving on, and he's not sure and could very well be headed back, and he doesn't want to spoil the moment. It was very genuine. We had to establish that he is of at least sound presence of mind, even if his decisions aren't always the best informed. He does what he thinks is right and is a fundamentally good person, so that we know that when he breaks the rules and climbs out of the thing and experiences the shock and stuff, that he's not doing it out of desperation to get to a different place. It's exclusively for her, even if it would cost him if he totally screwed it up. I mean, I don't know what the rules were, but when he's out on the tarmac or whatever, chasing the tram, if he didn't make it in, if he was disabled by the weird energy field outside of the tram, what would have happened to him? We needed him to be honorable and pure in order to justify him kind of defying the hard set rules, I feel like.
I don't know if you're deflecting But what I think you're saying is that...
What do you want me to say? Meryl Streep is hot and she's talented and she has a lovely smile and all that stuff. It seemed perfect for this movie because she wasn't, and nobody was, flashy or outwardly sexy in this movie that would have made it a baser movie, I guess.
What I think you're trying to say, that it wasn't about Meryl Streep, but the act of going all in for love. That's what moved you.
Yeah, like the theme of this movie, the earnestness of it was what was appealing. Was it the correct decision? He was certainly afraid, and he was screaming and running and afraid he wasn't going to make it and afraid he couldn't get through the door. But he still plunged headlong into it. And because of his earnestness, they could see that there wasn't a mean bone in his body. And he wasn't the person that fear would have broken down to make resentful and bitter or whatever.
Not when it was important. It was a very effective scene, and the swelling music when they're kissing in the tram to the next life or the next phase. It got me. I might not have laughed in defending your life, but I did get a little misty.
Oh, man.
And they were just so happy. It almost felt like the that Bob Diamond and Lena Foster, the counselors, were also happy. Like, they were happy. Even old stone cold Lena Foster was like happy for him that he could move on. He could go to the next phase.
Yeah. The Lena Foster character was played by Lee Grant, who is a fear overcoming heroine in her own right. And I think well suited to play the counsel. She was McCarthyismed and totally blacklisted by Hollywood because she was in love with a communist, with a Russian that they were targeting. Got blacklisted for something like 12 years. Thankfully, she was young enough that she could revive her career. So I think it's really telling for Albert Brooks to put her in the movie and for her to play a prominent, authoritative role like this. And I think Albert Brooks is, as you can see from Defending My Life, wildly respected. It was timely. It was insightful, this idea of the world that he created. Remember when the lady on the tram was like, how did you die? AIDS? Was it AIDS? And he's like, no, it wasn't AIDS, but that was a big thing, in 1991. I think the hysteria may not have been the pinnacle, but it was kind of still on everyone's minds. I mean, Philadelphia was 95.
He certainly was a presence, apparently not heavily on our radar, but he was a force. In Hollywood, he was respected as a comic and as a creator. I mean, so much so that Meryl Streep, according to Defending My Life, approached him about the role in Defending Your Life. I don't know if Meryl Streep was Meryl Streep in 1991.
Oh, yeah, 100%. She had already won. She was Sophie's Choice by then. She was as famous as anyone. She probably had half a dozen nominations and definitely a win under her belt already at that point.
Oh, okay. So she was a big deal, and she was approaching him about being in his movie. So I think that just says a little bit more about this Albert Brooks, who was not on our radar. And obviously she sets an amazing tone for the entire cast. The counselors, Bob Diamond and Lena Foster, even though they were hard as nails and they had great debating skills in the non-trial room, they were also so soft and squishy and likable, and Rip Torn blew me away with his comedy and with his general likability.
So it's interesting because I know Rip Torn from Men in Black, and he's funny and charmingly condescending. But when he took Defending Your Life, he was only scruffy guys or bad guys villains. And they were like, what was this turn into comedy like for you? And I was like, really? Rip Torn? But apparently that wasn't his thing until here.
Man, he's so good. I don't know if it was Rip Torn or if it was Albert Brooks's direction, but he treads that line of being sincere and condescending so delicately, but he always seems to stay on the right side of it, Do you think he's ever fully condescending?
No, he's a jokester at work, and he takes his job very seriously because he is one of the enlightened. He went down to earth, he did his things, he got smarter, and now he's a teacher for all intents and purposes. So I think that he took it seriously, but definitely liked having fun and was musing at all the trials that Sam has to go through that he went through. It's like that's your job. Being a big brother figure and kind of lightly mentoring people and guiding them is tough, and you need to have humor to survive it.
Wow, can you feel me rolling my eyes?
Yeah, can you see all the wild hand gesticulations I was making when I was pontificating about morality versus fear and how that makes us wonder about us and our human experience? Let's talk about the finer aspects of Judgment City, because in one way it seems like absolute heaven to me. I know we're not labeling things or whatever, but the idea of eating all you can, that seems like a universally human experience, right? What do we have to do every day? We have to eat food, and we have to make sure not to eat too much of the wrong thing, or eat enough of the right thing, and the right thing and the wrong thing never feel like the right. They feel like the opposite. But that seems pretty down. And not only is it like utilitarian food, but it's all the variety of food and the sushi restaurant waiting nearby and stuff. But heaven, 74 degrees, described as perfect weather. Not so much. A little bit warm for me.
Okay. So you'd tone down the temperature in Judgment City, in your ideal Judgment City?
Just a touch.
Okay.
Maybe 7 degrees.
7 degrees?
Yeah, man.
Be like Polar City.
Yeah, 51 degrees for sleeping. That's ideal.
I don't know, Wes. No sizzlers in Judgment City.
You don't need a sizzler. You have way better. Everything he tasted was delightful. Everything from raw tuna. How much can you do with raw tuna? He was like, like it's just a shrimp. It's fine. Like she was like the best shrimp I've ever had. It's amazing. He had like meatloaf or something and was like, incredible.
It was pretty cute, actually, to see them going on and on about their food. I don't know why he doesn't take that first omelet just with him. Like, if they bag things up, he can take it to go.
Yeah, he's like, this is the best omelet I've ever had. Now I'm going to leave because I need to get there on time.
He didn't even try the freshly squeezed crack orange juice.
Was it freshly squeezed out of a crack?
Like crack bacon.
Oh. So look, I love movies and watch as many movies as I possibly can. And when I find a movie I like, I watch it ad nauseum, as you well know. Is this movie hidden away in the vaults? Do they only show it to Jewish kids? How did this movie completely avoid my radar?
I think LA has the second largest population of Jewish people in the world, second to New York City. And here in the Valley, I mean, forget it. I don't know, dude. I guess I'm relieved to hear you say that you have the exact same Albert Brooks blind spot that I have, because I was feeling very uncultured. But I'm also feeling like a whole new world has been opened up to me.
Man, are we going to cover all of his filmography? Because I didn't watch Defending My Life because I didn't feel qualified. I saw this movie and Finding Nemo, and that's it. And so a testament to Albert Brooks's genius, I didn't feel like it warranted. I was a warranted audience member.
Defending My Life definitely plays a prominent role. I think it's a prominent film in his body of work. It was illuminating for sure. It certainly gives him a ton of legitimacy. I was surprised at the roles, the other dramatic roles that he played that I just didn't realize were Albert Brooks. He did Looking for Comedy in the Muslim World in 2005.
Man, wow.
That's ballsy. And he was dropped by his first distributor, had to go to a second distributor. I'm not sure how he was able to get Warner Independent to distribute this movie, but he did. I mean, he was literally, it's a fictional movie about him going to India and Pakistan, and trying to understand what they find to be funny. So he's trying out jokes on them to get a sense of their humor so that they can use comedy and humor as a means for establishing peace.
Look at that. Albert Brooks, ambassador and student of the human experience. So, Defending Your Life, boring, I assume?
Look, I didn't laugh once. It's true. But I found this to be so fresh, so amusing. People really throw around the genius title flippantly. Maybe this applies. Maybe this actually applies.
I equally didn't laugh. I think maybe I chuckled or whatever, but really I laughed more to myself in my assessment. Like in the middle of the movie, I came up with Beetlejuice and started laughing. And Kelly Ray was like, "You're laughing," but I wasn't laughing at the movie. It had a multicultural discipline and yet a uniquely cultural humor style that I think may not resonate with everyone and thus isn't, I don't know, it wasn't nominated for Best Picture for that year, for 1992, and didn't really make a splash except for the people who love him and turn out on his behalf for Defending My Life.
And your final rating is?
Face value, I appreciated how clever this movie was consistently. Looked a little low budge to me. The ultimate chase and action scene at the end, terribly implausible, because they backed those trams up they backed those buses up every single time, because he fell, rolled, got up, and the buses were just passing him again. Seems improbable, but we got to give the hero his opportunity and let him reach it. And I guess that's what we did for Defending Your Life. I do respect what he was attempting to do. Was it funny? Was it back-breakingly funny, as Mr. Fenton suggested? I don't know about that, but I'm going to give it an all right.
And there you have it. That's our discussion on Defending Your Life from 1991. The request of Sean. Thank you, Sean, for opening up my world. And that's to note that we do take requests here at Or Whatever Movies. Do you have a film that you'd like for us to cover? Let us know. 818-835-0473 or whatevermovies@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome to Transforming 45, the podcast that celebrates the incredible power of passionate voices. I'm your host, Lisa Boat. Join me in conversation with heart-led humans who share their deeply personal stories of transformation. Transforming 45 is here to uplift, connect, and remind you that it's never too late to write your next chapter. So get ready to be inspired, empowered, and transformed. Join me in this community where through powerful storytelling, we heal and reclaim our inherent magic.
Electricast. Electricast. Welcome to the Candle Power Hour. Come with us backstage behind the scenes of show business spanning over 4 decades and bringing you the experiences that can only be told by the people who were there.
Our guests are from the A-list, the F-list, and everyone in between. Get set for some of the most insane, hilarious, and inspiring stories you will ever hear.
I'm Mercury.
And I'm Diego.
Your hosts for the Candle Power Hour.
Electricast.